A minute, guys, if take a seat. Cool. Welcome to Cyberscope Connect Volume 3, or if you've been coming here for a long time, number whatever it is. I don't know, loads, haven't we? Thank you all for coming. Brilliant turnout, as always, and really appreciate the support. So we've got 4 brilliant speakers tonight. Unfortunately, Sophie can't be with us, so Harry's going to stand in. We are using Slido again. Sorry if you all see that. So if you want to ask questions anonymously, please use it properly. We can always get a few silly things. There's a chance to feedback either about the event or things you'd like to see, or you want to nominate yourself as a speaker or whatever. You can go to slido.com and use the code #CSC3. We'll be keeping an eye on it here in a minute. We'll try and do some Q&A at the end. Normal house rules, judgment-free, sales-free. If you've been here before, you know what these events are about, and we appreciate you sort of adhering to those things. Had a good bit of feedback recently about our code of conduct for these events, and we always appreciate that kind of feedback. So what we've done is we've changed it. We're now using the Berlin Code of Conduct, which is an open source code of conduct used by hundreds of meetups around the world. Please go and have a look at it, it's really good. So we do take the feedback on board and try and improve things as we go along. Thank you to our speakers as always, and our host Skyscanner for Product Forge, for streaming and getting these things out on YouTube for us. So thank you very much. I'm going to go pass you over to Harry.
Thanks, Stu. Beer or clicker? It's a bit of a dilemma. Oh well, I think I'll have to do.
Right, so I'm just going to cover off a real quick bit about Cyberscope Connect, and then I'm going to present a couple of slides from Sophie, who's one of Cyberscope Connect's mods. By mods, I mean moderators. So there's essentially 17 people from within the community that have come forward and essentially, offered/been asked if they'd help us lead the group, because we don't want it to be the Stu and Harry show. We very much want it to be representative of, the people that actually want to attend and be part of the community. And to that effect, we've also gone out and spoken to organisations that we've worked with, and these are our partners. So our partners are organisations that have essentially committed to a really short, and it's all on GitHub, you can check it and correct my spelling if you'd like, but essentially to promote our values, and that is, to create an inclusive community within Scotland and to bring other communities together. Not under a single banner, as in take them over, but just to facilitate and support. So these are our initial partners. So the Cyber Academy, which is from Napier, Napier University themselves, ENUSEC, which is the Cybersecurity Society of Napier, DEFCON Edinburgh, ISC Squared, Scottish Chapter, and SBRC are all our initial partners, which is brilliant, and we're really grateful to be working with them. Sometimes we're going to be working with them on events, other times just public initiatives and kind of statements of working together around things like diversity, inclusivity, and so on. And then there's our supporters. We preferred supporter than sponsor, but essentially these are organisations that give us resources for free, whether that be this awesome venue, the pizza and the beer, Skyscanner and Wood Mackenzie, Napier as well, or whether that be Adama, Digit, and also Product Forge, who give us their time and in some cases money to buy things like pizza and beer when it's not at a venue that provides it for us. So the only difference with supporters and partners is our partners have committed to our values, whereas the supporters haven't necessarily done that, which isn't a problem. It's just to make it clear between people that just kind of give us stuff, which is awesome, but those that actually want to work with us in a slightly different way. And so that's that. We're looking for more always. We again want to be inclusive about our partnerships, and that's why the partner agreement is really short, but essentially just says, we're here to work together for the greater good of the Scotland cybersecurity and information security community, as opposed to kind of building kingdoms and just promoting brands and specific companies. Not Sophie. Sophie is, as I mentioned, our mod. She's also our publicity lead, and all of the Cyberscope Connect branding, website, and what you're about to see as well, which is some merch, is everything that she's designed. She's an incredible designer, really passionate, and unfortunately work emergencies keeping her from tonight. So I've only got 2 slides. So first and foremost, cyberscotlandconnect.com is relaunched. It's been kind of beta tested for a while now, so it works pretty well. And it's just where you can find out all the information that you probably already know because you're already here. But for people that don't know who we are, it contains things like our values, a list of our partners, a list of our mods, and we're going to start using it for blogging, resources, and a lot of other stuff as well. And then finally, so these will actually be released later tonight. So we're releasing a load of merch because people asked us to, basically. You can see me modeling some of it, and Stu and Gary also have some hoodies on, which are awesome. Yeah, so the links will be on Twitter and on the website soon. Sorry? Oh, you can get it now.
Yep, it works.
Yeah, brilliant, excellent. So we're not releasing this stuff to try and generate revenue. We've set the kind of the bar of what the website allows you to set at the lowest possible one, and all income will either be donated to charity or to buy merch for us to give out for free. So no one here is making any money. It's all going to be very transparent, but we thought it'd be cool to have some merch for CSC. So that is me, and I'm now going to hand over to Jerry. No, sorry, wrong way around. I don't know why this. Wrong way around.
Yeah, sorry, that's my fault.
Yeah. No, sorry. There we go. Sasha.
Do you want to pop down, Gary? And
I've
just
got
make sure
this,
we've got this,
Yeah, you've got. You'll need that one as well.
Okay.
That's for internal. That's for the live stream.
Okay.
Control F4. If in doubt, get rid of it.
Is this clicker? Should I use this for?
Yeah, it should work. Down.
He says confidently.
Yeah.
That's because of the way the presentation is set up.
So just do.
So scroll more.
Yeah, that one.
Probably
Okay.
easiest, yeah.
Okay. So good evening, and thank you for your time. Thanks for giving me a platform tonight. My name's Saoirse Lorimer. I'm the founder and CEO of Trace. So no sales pitch, but what we do is we protect the data that matters. So we make GDPR compliance visual and more engaging. But you can find out more at trace.ventures. And okay, that's not working. 2 seconds. I'm just going to jump on to, bear with me, I think it's better if I jump onto the keynote. Nope, not that one. Let's see, we do it this way. Let's try again. There we go. Okay. So, a little bit about me. So what I'm going to talk tonight about is rebels. So in terms of rebels, a lot of you may work in, obviously the majority of the audience works in cybersecurity. I'm presuming that a lot of you work in security standards, compliance programs, governance. So I have a little bit of that background myself. I worked in Standard Life for a number of years, brand guidelines, compliance programs, policies. And what I found is that there was a lot of, the people don't always like to be told what to do. So you get a lot of people that are running counter to that. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is handling rebels, bringing in the mavericks, and actually what you can learn from those rebels. So a bit of rebel rules. So it's a bit of it sounds like a contradiction in terms, but hopefully by the end of it, you'll see that it's not. So why the photo of Goa in the 1970s? Well, this isn't my parents, but they were something like that. So I know a little thing about rebels, you see. So my parents, I was conceived in Goa in the late 1970s. I then grew up in a commune. So I know a little thing about rebels because my parents were dropouts. They both grew up in very conventional backgrounds and they decided to completely drop out and be hippies. But from my point of view, growing up in a commune and actually traveling around Europe in a camper van, everyone needs to rebel against that. But my point here is that rebels come in many guises, and actually sometimes being the straight person, so think of me as Safi, right? This is someone who I really identified with. That can be a way of rebelling. So rebelling is maybe just sort of fighting against what your upbringing is, seeing a different point of view, maybe not exactly kind of embracing exactly what your parents say. So come in many different guises. So when I found myself in the corporate role, nice pension, good salary, comfortable job, coming up to 40, it wasn't quite me. You know, that rebellious spirit, I guess, was coming out again, and hence I've set up my own business. But yeah, it's something that I think was in me to kind of come out of. But definitely a disappointment to my parents to end up in a big corporate role. So who are the rebels? Obviously David Bowie, can't talk about rebels without mentioning him. The rebels I'm going to talk about tonight are positive rebels. So I know that there are rogues, there are troublemakers, there's hardened cynics, there's the negatives. That's not what I'm talking about tonight. So the rebellious mindset in this sense is a positive one. So it's that really challenging, curious, creative, challenging the status quo, having the courage to stand up and say the truth or be the whistleblower. So again, it could be a whistleblower against the culture. It doesn't necessarily have to be the typical, atypical rebel. So when I talk about being a rebel, I'd frame it as being skeptical is good, being a hardened cynic, negative. So lots of different rebels throughout history, suffragettes, Walt Disney, Einstein, of course, Lincoln, Steve Jobs. The positive rebel is the one that seeks to improve, not just break things, not be difficult, not ruin stuff. So that's why those positive rebels, I believe, can be an asset to a compliance program, to governance, which may sound like a contradiction in terms, but again, hopefully we'll explore why that's not the case. So again, rebels come in many different guises. You don't have to be an all-out rebel, but there's rebel thinking. So I think that, again, much like our capacity for creativity, it's not just the artists, the kind of really clearly creative people that can be the creative ones or the rebellious. I think that we all have the capacity for thinking different, for challenging, and actually it's healthy if we can create a culture where we bring that out. So I've been there, as I explained. I worked in Standard Life. I was in charge of, for my sins, I was in charge of the brand guidelines. I was in charge of policies, in charge of governance. I worked in marketing, I worked in information security, worked in brand. And I know it would have taken a lot less time just to say, do this, and just everyone follows it. And it could be annoying to hear all those challenging voices. But actually, it's not about just write the policies, the perfect policies, and then that sticks. Is actually what is the behavior. So looking really beyond having all those kind of perfect policies and standards in place, and actually how does that translate to what people really do? So taking the long route round, I think, is important. So look at who rebels and who questions and challenges. Ask them why, bring them in. Make them co-owners in the process. So it's really working on the hearts as well to minds so they actually do the changes. So instead of writing these perfect policies and just sending them out, expecting people to read them, actually can you sit down and can you write them together, can you communicate in different ways? So we're going to look at these rebel rules. I've got a few of them, so I'm just going to canter through them. We all know that stories resonate. So stories are the things that people remember. That's your brain's way of translating it into reality. So how could you bring your security standards, your governance, your compliance programs to life through the story? So one of the things that I like is, mythology, the old stories is very nice to tap into. There's the hero story. So how do I translate this to GDPR, which is my subject, David and Goliath. Everyone likes the underdog story, right? So how does that translate to governance and data protection? Well, actually, as you probably all know in the room, GDPR is about decentralization, right? So it's about putting people's data in their own hands and saying that, you know, they own it for themselves as against a corporation. So it's that kind of kickback against surveillance capitalism, which appeals to that rebellious mindset. So it's about protecting the people. So in thinking about the room tonight and cybersecurity professionals, I'm just thinking, you know, what is the story behind it? So are you, you know, you're hunting the bad guys. I think that's pretty cool. So how could you make that a story? You're calling it injustice. You're protecting people. So really lifting up to the story. So that's one rule. Embracing diversity. So we had a little chat with someone in the room about this. Actually, you know, my journey was really, really helpful in Standard Life, where I worked, you know, marketing to IT to information security to brand. It's a bit of a weird journey, but it meant that I understood the different perspectives. And I also observed that there was friction between the departments, and it was a lot of time wasted. I mean, actually, you're all colleagues going in the same direction in a large organization. So why is this disconnect? So actually, you know, can you kind of cross-pollinate? Can you move between departments? Can you understand different perspectives? How will that help you get better? I think that, you know, they definitely take that approach in, I know, a lot of risk departments. The way that I saw it was, if I'm an expert, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do myself out of a job. So it's always that way of, rather than knowledge is power, and I'm going to lord all my jargon and my expertise over my colleagues. Well, that's totally not cool. Actually, can you take a bit more time, drop the jargon, share the learnings, educate, explain, and work together? And actually, what could you learn from, you know, let's say marketing department? So embracing the other perspective, this concept of being an expert generalist is really cool. I think they apply it quite a lot to Elon Musk, who's obviously phenomenal at sort of cross-pollinating between different expertises and then finding the innovation. So something that I definitely looked at, and I would encourage you to look at further. There's some nice articles that I can refer you on to. Okay. So a nice little quote from Eric Schmidt there. We run this company on questions, not answers. So, you know, if you have a business, a culture, of course you want people to be able to ask those tough questions or the really obvious question. If that's really locked down, then, you know, is that a place where anyone wants to work? It definitely creates more noise and things take longer, but actually, you know, we should all be embracing diversity. So this is really what I kind of definitely learned from my own experience. We spent a lot of time writing policies. They became very long policies because we had to consult with lots of people, lawyers and so forth, lots of legalese. So, you know, beautifully written, but then you'd ask someone to recall the policy that's supposed to be, I've read it, you know, a couple of weeks ago, nothing. But actually, what about if you'd written the policy together, if you'd written the guidelines together, co-authored, co-owned it? I think you'd find a lot of different traction there. The other point is that your best practice, this goes for cybersecurity. Obviously, again, I'm not an expert in it, but it's so dynamic. So it might be that your rule, your guideline actually isn't the latest thing. So just being open to that. Okay, less is more. So this is Hugh. Do you know, a lot of the time when I was working on policies and governance, I thought, a lot of this is just common sense. It's just common sense. Don't be an idiot. Don't be a dick. You know, so can you just really dial it up to something more simple? That's going to stick in the head. And if you could apply that to lots of different situations and behaviors, maybe that would be, to me, it's much more adult to adult. To me, if you're doing it specifically, you need to do this exact thing all the time, that's kind of patronizing, or, you know, and then you're going to get people, there's always going to be outliers who are going to want to rebel against that naturally. The other thing about the HEAL stuff is it's up on the wall. It's living, breathing. It's not in, like, you know, a Word document on the internet that no one read. So the important thing is the means of communication and keeping it really simple. It's really easy to write a long document And you do need to write the long document, but don't be lazy. Also write the concise versions and all that staging behind it. Writing the concise document is what takes longer, so doing that too. So that's just an example from Southwest Airline. You know, they just had one rule, safety for everyone. So there might be something in your organization that could just be simplified to that level. I don't know. So theory is very nice. There's lots of theory in terms of data protection, cybersecurity. There's a hell of a lot of theory there, but actually what do people do? So that could be something that you absolutely measure, and you detect, well, actually if we shift it and we do the things in a different way, how are people reacting differently? It takes an exponential change for someone to do something differently. So again, measure the behavior, not the theory. One of the nice ideas here, I think, that again I've tried in the past myself, is a manifesto. So rather than do the training on the policy and say that you've read it and tick the box to say that you'll always comply with this policy, how about a manifesto that people have to proactively sign up to? Making it very principle-based, I believe there's a lot of transference from user design that you can take into privacy and security. So really making it about those high-level points rather than the detail. There's a lot of pedantics when it comes to data protection and you know, the whole kind of legalities around it, but the only people that will make sense to is the experts. So in terms of the wider organization, you're just going to lose them in that detail. Keep it real. So I love that one. Bimbos. So I've worked in brands, in large organizations, smaller organizations. Sometimes it's real and sometimes it's not. And you can always tell if you work in an organization. You know, we're super collaborative, and then there's just silos everywhere. No one talks to each other. So brand, the outside brand and the inside brand should match each other. So it's your reputation, but it's also your culture, and it's the whole story, the real story. So your governance program, your standards, your best practice should absolutely relate back to your brand story, but that has to be real. So it's just finding about something which is real to you. So it should need to be consistent. Engage the brain. So this is what we do at Trace. We map out exactly where data is in the world. So we all know this is, you can hear stuff. If you see the pictures too, you're much more likely to recall it by 6 times. So words, you're hearing the message, 3 days later, 10% recall. With one picture, 65%, so 6 times more. So why would policies be just like a Word document, screeds of text? Why would you not have images? Why would you not have video? Why would you not have, you know, all of those things? Why do you not have posters? There's lots of different communication touch points for the brain to really accept and digest stuff. Words, okay, so I found working with, you know, saying data governance, there's lots of words which have been hanging around a long time. And this is massively important for cybersecurity too. There's a lot of jargon. But if no one else understands it outside your own team, then what's the point? So maybe you should change the word, which some people really don't like. You know, this is the exact meaning. But if no one else understands it, you'll maybe have to shift it. So instead of data governance, managing information, whatever it is, sometimes you have to reframe. Whatever resonates with the audience, it's not about you, it's about what resonates. It's important, and being clear and being consistent. A bugbear of mine is just terms and conditions, privacy policies. They're all so long. As we all know, no one reads them, so it misses the point. They need to be much shorter. It's not fair, it's not ethical. And again, to me, if it's too wordy, if no one understands it, that's lazy. But if you've done the work to really think about how the audience are going to understand it, you've simplified, made it more concise, then, and that takes more time, then that is the real work. So if you can't explain it like I'm 5, then you don't really get it yourself. Don't make me think. Do make me think. So one of the key things is leading with the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we, why is cybersecurity important? Why is risk important? Why is managing data effectively important? Why is protecting it important? If you spend most of your time on that, rather than exactly what you do and how you do it, which is very, again, spending time in the why is much more adult to adult, much more level, then let the team work out the rest, trust them, treat them like a clever person, and just because they're not necessarily in your area of expertise, they might get it. I think what's another cool way is risk scenario planning as a team. I've spoken to a lot of businesses, worked with a lot of businesses who are very much like, it will never happen to me. Never happen to me. No way. But maybe if you walk it out, if you go through that together, they'll maybe start to understand and think about it. So it's moving away from a very emotional reaction to it will never happen to me. Just about finishing. You all know that's right. So just summing up there, I would embrace rebel thinking in compliance, and hopefully you now see that that's not a complete contradiction. Challenge is good, but obviously just pure out and out negativity is not. So you do need a shared baseline. No rules and complete chaos just doesn't work. That's I've seen that happen as well. Work together, co-create, find the benefit, move between departments, go and sit with another department and spend time with colleagues in different areas. That's really important and happens a lot, I'm guessing, in Skyscanner. Think about communication methods, maybe learn from your communication colleagues. It's got to align to culture. Could you keep it simple, as in just one rule, do the right thing? And then thinking about data governance as agile. So this constant improving rather than here's the policies, here they are once a year, get all the lawyers involved, and then we just expect that everyone reads it. So that's me. Got the slides at the end. Thank you very much.
Is there any questions in the room? This is the quiet. Oh, right in the back, of course there is. 2 seconds, right. I'll run it with the mic for the sake of the live stream. You can't see me run like this.
You talked about stories or motivational examples. What's the most effective or motivational story you've seen in data security or governance getting folk from a position here and moving to somewhere else? The examples you have.
So specifically in cybersecurity? Yeah. Yeah, so I think I think the tabletop planning, I don't know if you've ever been involved in the tabletop planning exercise where there is a scenario and a case study and everyone's involved in that. I just think they're there's other ways that you can make that more interactive. I think there was a company doing a VR version of that, which is pretty cool. So that's something which is based on this could really happen, but then being able to actually walk it through is really powerful because it builds muscle memory. Because then if it happens, I think a lot of leaders panic if the worst happens, and so the emotions get clouded. But actually, if you've walked through it before, then the next, then it happens for real. You're going to keep that cool. So I mean, the thing is, there's been quite a lot of good case studies that I've heard. The only problem I have is they get the heart racing. They're very much like fear and scary, and then people gravitate to those ones as like the big kind of cool, sexy cyber stories, and maybe forget about the innocuous stuff. So it would be cool if there was ones which were more kind of prosaic. Make sense?
Anyone got maybe run to the front and at the back? More questions? Show me your hands. There we go.
To what extent do you think the VA find last week will influence the industry?
Yeah, I think it's positive. Anyone works in this industry, it's positive that the ICO, the regulators, have shown that they've got teeth. They're prepared to act. So the Marriott and then the BA one, 300 million. You need that. I would love to say that you could go all carrot and there's no fear and all the rest of it. We've seen it, people will just let cybersecurity drop off the agenda. And what's interesting is that they're focusing on where it's credit card details, so high-risk data, and security flaws. So in my mind, they're focusing where it matters. So I think it's positive. I'm really interested in what's happening in the USA as well. So obviously the FTC, Facebook can manage the fine, but there's just a different thinking happening in America now, state by state, when it comes to privacy. So we'll see if we get a different precedent, and you probably get a federal law as well. So that will be crucial because obviously that's where most of the sort of surveillance capitalist models are. So yeah, the global picture is really interesting, but the grace period needed to end, and the ICO needed to act, so people don't forget about it.
All right, thank you all very much. Please give a big round of applause. We're going to switch around speakers, and then after Jerry has presented here, we will take a short break. Lightning fast, there we go. Over to Jerry.
Well, can you hear me okay? Over there, cool. I normally like to walk about quite a bit when I present, but I spilled pizza down my shirt. It's got a big stain on it. And there's a video camera, and apparently my wife's watching, so I better just stand here, just in case. My name's Jerry Grant. I'm the Chief Security Officer for a company called Converged, who are based up in Aberdeen, and they do lots of stuff. If you want to know, come and talk to me afterwards. I just want to tell a bit of a story. I heard a really interesting story on a podcast, and I thought that's worth digging into a little bit more. And if my daddy was a bank robber, I wouldn't be standing here. But what would he do, and how do we rob a bank? How do we actually get cash from it? You can do it this way, which somebody, I live in Carnoustie, and the shop just around the corner from me, they had their ATM stolen, and they did a smash and grab, so they smashed in the windows. They managed to pull the ATM out, they stuck it in the back of a truck, and off they went. They got caught later on that day in Arbroath in the McDonald's at 10 o'clock, because after you've stolen £30,000, you do want to celebrate, and let's face it, you can't beat an Egg McMuffin, can you? To be honest, I think I might have splashed out and gone to Wetherspoons. But the issue with doing it this way is it's pretty noisy. The ATMs tend to be concreted in. You probably need to explode it when you get home. The guys in Carnoustie, they never managed to get the ATM open. Even if you do get it open, you've got the safe inside that you're going to have to crack open the safe. The notes inside are probably dyed as well, so the chances are you're going to get caught. So we could use a skimmer, and we can stick a skimmer on the ATM. We all know to pull the entrance bit before you stick your card in. But the issue with that is you need to go back to the scene of the crime so you can actually get your skimmer back. All the banks are putting these anti-skimming devices on now. There's probably CCTV that's going to capture you doing it, and you only get the card details. And we all know you can sell the card details, but you don't get too much on the dark web. I'd rather just have the actual cash itself. So how do we get the cash out of the ATM? We can do it with physical access. If you can get physical access to an ATM machine, if you think about all these little corner shops, they've all got ATM machines in them now. They stick them in the back corner where nobody can see. Quite a lot of the time as well, like in the example here, there's maybe an Ethernet port sitting there, there's maybe a USB port. They're quite easy to pop open. Barnaby Jack did a talk 2012, I think it was, over at DEF CON. He bought some ATM machines to try and test the security of them. So he bought some. When they got delivered, apparently the delivery man said to him, "What do you need an ATM machine for?" And Barnaby Jack said, "I don't like the transaction fees." So that was getting home one. He discovered, and this has been fixed now, but he discovered that you can open the ATM machine if you've got a key. All the ATM vendors, if you bought an NCR machine, one key opened all those ATM machines. So you just stick the key in, unlock it, you can pop it open, and inside you've got the computer that runs the ATM. But you need to find a machine that you can access. There's still CCTV, but on the plus side, a lot of the ATMs, they still run legacy operating systems. You can potentially install some malware with a USB stick, or there might even be a CD-ROM in there. Does anybody remember CD-ROMs? Yeah, one or two people. Some you might even be able to boot from USB. You can install your own custom firmware. You can install your own operating system. You can change the order of the cassette. So inside the ATM, you've got a £20 note cassette, you've got a £10 note cassette. You can switch them around, do whatever you like in there. There was some malware that went around, the Tayupkin malware, and that's what they did was they opened the ATMs, they stuck a USB stick in which installed the malware in there. Now they're quite clever in that the malware by default only worked on I think it was a Sunday night and a Monday night between midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning. So you knew you had to send your money mules at the right time when the ATM was going to be quiet. You went up to the machine, you typed in a special code in the keypad and it pinged up the menu for you. And when it pinged up the menu, there was a seed number, so you had to phone back to the control centre with the seed number. They would then generate a session key for you, text you the session key. You can type in the session key in the menu. It would tell you how much money was in each of the different cassettes, and you could pick which cassette you wanted to empty, and it would ping all the notes out for you. Thanks very much. There's a little bit of cash you can put in your pocket. I think back in about 2016, 2017, you could actually buy this malware on the dark web. It cost you $5,000. For that, you would get your USB stick. You would then go and find your machine. You would infect the machine. The person that sold you the malware would give you your session key so that you could empty the machine. And then they took 60% of whatever you emptied out of the machine. So if you think if there was $10,000 in the machine, it cost you $5,000 to actually buy the malware, and then you had to give them 60% of the $10,000, another $6,000. You're only left with about $1,000 before you have to go and find another cash machine. So physical security is getting better around about around about ATM machines with CCTV cameras. Certainly in Europe it's quite common that you need to swipe your card to get into a foyer before you can access the ATM machines. So we're doing lots of things to try and make it a little bit more difficult for the bad guys to do this sort of thing. So maybe we should just actually hack a bank instead of just hacking the ATM machine. Over in the Ukraine, a security researcher for Kaspersky got a phone call and he was told that he needed to go to this bank urgently. Could you go along and have a little look at something? And when he went along, the IT department showed them some CCTV footage. And the CCTV footage was of one of these bank foyers, and it showed a gentleman swipe his debit card. He walked into the foyer and he didn't touch a single ATM machine, but as soon as he got close to them, it spat the money out. He scooped it up, put it into his holdall and moved on to the next one. And they reckon there was 4 ATM machines in there, and they reckon each one held about $250,000 when it was empty. So you walked out of there with $1 million, and they were like, how did they do that? And they couldn't work it out. For a while, they were thinking it might have been that Tayupkin malware that was in play, but for that to work, you had to actually touch the ATM. He hadn't touched the ATM, so we're thinking maybe it was a variety of this. And a few months later, the security researcher got another phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was from another bank in Russia this time, in Ukraine again, and they said, you need to go to this bank and you need to go right now. No questions, just get there. So off he trots to the bank. He sees the poor IT guy who's sitting there sweating, and he says, I'm watching my logs and I can see all this traffic has started flowing from the bank over to an IP address in China, and there's no reason we shouldn't be sending any data at all. So he starts doing a little bit of research and a little bit of digging. He's having a look to see what's running on the computers, looking at what ports are open, what's happening, and eventually he finds there's a VNC connection. So there seems to be some sort of VNC connection between the bank's domain controller and an IP address over in China. So what's the first thing you would think of doing at that point? You'd open up a Word document and you would type hello. But he did it in Russian, so that if you're attacking a bank in Russia, you're bound to be able to speak Russian, so let's have a look and see what happens. And he left it sitting for a little while, and eventually he got a reply that said, you'll not catch us. So they discovered what the virus was, they had a look about, and it turned out to be a new virus, which was Carnabank, which they discovered was spreading, I think it covered over 100 different banks, mainly in Eastern Europe, but it was also hitting banks in the Netherlands and hit a few banks over in the UK as well. And how did it get in? With a bit of investigation, they found out phishing emails were the #1 root cause of how this virus was actually getting into the machines. And essentially what they'd do is they would target a low-level employee within the organisation. They would send them an email to the event manager, and they would say, we've got an event that we think you might be interested in, can you click open this Word document and have a look, which the event manager did to have a look at, and that started the download of all the malware. And what the malware did was it would install a keylogger, it would install some video recording software, and it would work, and it would have a look around about the network. So initially it would look around. If you were on somebody in the marketing department's team, for example, you're not going to get very far through the network there. So what they would do is they would just make the computer run really slowly. So they might crash Excel or crash Word, so that particular user would then phone the IT department. Somebody from IT would come along, they would have a look to see what was making the computer run slow, type in the local admin password. We've got a keylogger in there, so that information was all getting sent back to the bad guys as well. They also installed the video recording software, which sent very low quality and low resolution videos back to the control centre so that nobody would notice there was too much traffic leaving from the computers. So they could actually have a look around about the systems, and they could see what the systems looked like and how things were done. Eventually they would pivot their way through the system, and they would find people that did manual bank transfers. So the guys that were actually sitting there transferring money from one account to another. And they would sit and watch these videos and they'd work out exactly how these manual transfers worked, how they were done, and what happened. So they spent a long time watching the network and watching what went on in the networks. One of the things that they did was figure out how to get onto the ATMs and how to empty the ATMs, which is where this money was all spewing out from. And another thing that they did was they would create new bank accounts. So they would just open up the database, create a new bank account for a money mule somewhere in their name, and they would set the balance at an odd number, so it would be like $3.33. And then the next thing that they would do is they would update that database. So they would update customers, set the balance to $1 million, where the current balance is $3.33. And everybody's bank account that had that amount in it all of a sudden got a little bit of a boost. So my bank account currently has £3.33 in it, fingers crossed, quite soon. But that's what they did, and they knew that obviously there would be some innocent people in there that would get a little bit extra, but they also knew where all the money mules were, and they knew all those money mules would get that money that they could come back for as well. They reckon that Carnabank managed to get away with somewhere in the region of about $1.2 billion. They've arrested, as far as I know, one person for it, who was a guy in Spain who paid for most things with Bitcoin, but obviously there's one or two things you can't buy with Bitcoin yet. so he had to use cash for that, and he got caught with an accounting mistake that his accountant made. So I don't think he was very happy about that, and he got arrested for it. But we're seeing more and more of these types of attack. But when you look at the way, particularly Carnabank it was run, it just reiterates the need that we need to get the basics right when it comes to security. Carnabank used vulnerabilities that Microsoft had patched, so there was patches out there. It was using things that we should have had fixed that weren't fixed. You look at the physical security of ATMs, we need to think about the physical security of our own buildings and who's coming in and out of our buildings. Are we locking our computers? Are we doing all these things? And we need to make people think about these basics before we try and get them to do more complicated things. That's pretty much me, because I know there's a break after me. And yeah, that's me. Has anybody got any questions for me?
Hands up.
One question.
I'll come down.
Right, I'm just curious how they timed the ATM to split the money out separately from the guy.
So they would be in contact with him, and they would know when he was going in, and then he would say, "That's me, I'm in the bank." They would hit the money and pop it out. So the money mules know that they're going to get a cut of the cash, and they know the criminals that run the gangs try to have as much control over them as humanly possible, so that they know exactly how much money they're getting, how much money they're due, where they are, make sure they know exactly where they're supposed to be at the right time as well.
So it's quite theatrical.
Yeah, I think they were just, he's just walking past it, and it's like, yeah, it would have been, it would have been good to watch. There's another question, just.
I just want to reassure people that I actually work for an ATM security company that's based in Edinburgh, and we're I guess the number one software company. So I just want to reassure people that number one, typically in most banks there's no connection between central banking functions and the ATMs. So that's one way of dealing with this kind of issue. And the other issue, of course, if you're spotting a USB in your corner shop, it will be locked down.
I'm not saying all ATMs are like that. And it is much more prevalent, these types of attack are much more prevalent in sort of Eastern Europe and South America, apparently, Brazil, Colombia, places like that are where there's been a lot of attacks like that historically.
I lost the mic. The best one that I ever heard of was somebody who was running a security camera with a USB in Brazil, and so basically the criminals could log in via the security camera.
Yeah.
But that was a number of years ago.
Yeah.
It's like the Pablo Escobar's proverb thing, where he says that, yes, the only person that buys a Tesla in South America, because there's nowhere to charge them, are drug dealers, so that when they get caught, there's nobody behind the wheel. Scary future for us all. Any more questions? Step count.
Trends are showing us now, what the trends now with the cards you're seeing on the tap, you're seeing in Scotland at the moment?
I've not really researched it, and in my opinion, the banks, and this is only my opinion, the banks claim there's very, very little fraud on contactless payments. But if you think about it, if you were a sensible criminal, if there is such a thing, people talk about the fact that you can get a card payment machine and you can walk about and you can tap people's pockets with a card payment machine and you can get £30 every time you tap them. But that wouldn't work in practice, because you would need to have a merchant number, people would start complaining they'd lost £30, so you would get caught really, really quickly. A much easier way of doing it is to get the NFC reader and capture all the details. So you've got all the credit card details, you can store them and then use them much later online, or you can sell them to somebody else. So it must be, in my opinion, it must be difficult for the banks to actually attribute whether that credit card was lost because of somebody losing it on a phishing website, or whether they've lost it because somebody tapped their card with an NFC reader. So I don't really know how they can come up with their figures, but I could be entirely wrong.
At the moment, seeing there's a trend going on already.
Not that I've seen. Not that I've seen. But they say it's safe.
It's good to say that I think some of those figures might be slightly blurred with mistakes that the people installing the contactless readers are doing. There's a large service integrator that has an office up here and around the world, and they installed the EPOS systems for a clothes company that also has food outlets, and this was quite early when the card readers were going in places, and they hadn't really calibrated the power they were putting into the readers. So as people were buying their shopping, it would go, oh, I'll do contactless, it'd go ding, thank you very much for the payment. And it was card roulette, but it was card roulette based on people who was walking past at that point in time. And I don't know if anybody else played around with the different readers, but certainly PayPal's one, you could get that to take a reading at almost a foot when they first came out. And within a few days, it went down to about half a foot. Within a month, you really had to be really close, and that was just the firmware updates. They sort of thought, oh shit, actually, hang on, this isn't right, and they changed them. So some of those figures about fraud may not really be fraud, but just companies copying up.
We all make mistakes. Let's not forget. But I think there will be people out there that are getting their cards read, but how do you know when you lost those credit card details? Do you remember that person bumping into you in the street who read your credit card with their NFC reader, and then 6 months later you sold your credit cards and there's credit card fraud on it? So, but yeah, I think there was a question here as well.
There was one of the talks at B-Sides London this year. Gave some very good figures on attacks through contactless, and recommending better option is mobile payment. Just in terms of the potential for taking money out.
I'm trying to find it just now.
I think mobile payments, but the average person, a lot of them, do they trust? They would rather use their card because it came from the bank. Do they use, why would I use my phone when I can use it? I know my dad would freak out about that. But yeah. Right, thank you.
All right. 5-10 minute comfort break. We'll open up all the doors and try and evacuate the heat out of here now that everyone's away home. So toilets are back out the double doors that you came in, the automatic ones, female on the left, gents on the right. Soft drinks are available up at the fridge on your way out the door on your right. You'll see them, black fridges, help yourself to whatever's in there. There are glasses for water under the sinks, normally to the right, the shelves are open, there's no doors. Never look behind the doors in here. You don't know what's there. Alright, we'll be back in about 5-10 minutes. Thank you.
Hearing me out this evening. This is actually the first time I've come to one of these events because a young 2-year-old daughter and a very tired wife have meant evening activities have been severely limited. So first time getting out here, so really excited. So welcome to DevSecOps, fact or yet another buzzword, aka saving developers from themselves. So who am I? I'm Scott McAndrew, work for Palo Alto Networks, otherwise known as H from Steps. So when I'm not on tour, I'm actually working for Palo. So hopefully you see the similarities. Previous background actually come from Palo customer, worked in ops for an awful long time. So yeah, a few grey hairs to show for that. And I'm a lazy engineer, so hence why I like DevSecOps. I like to automate stuff. You're probably wondering who the gentleman is on the right there. That's James Holland. I have to give him a big shout out because without James collaborating with the demo tonight, it wouldn't have been possible. Basically, he's done 90% of the work and I'm here taking the credit for it, so great. So, because this is a live demo, so what can possibly go wrong? I'm just going to dive straight into it now so I can actually kick it off. So, don't worry too much about the details here, and can everyone see that okay? Yep, cool. So this is a ServiceNow instance. I've created an application which is a front end to collect information from Mr. DevOps. So I'm Mr. DevOps right now. I need an environment, so I'm going to request it on this portal that we've designed to capture all the relevant information. So that's what I'm on now. A couple of details. It allows me to select what cloud platform I want to deploy on, what kind of dev environment, and what kind of application stack. So again, this is all sort of filled in by default. So just to show that I'm doing this live, would anyone like to give me the name of their favourite alcoholic beverage? Tequila. Love it. Excellent. So I'm going to call this project name Tequila. So loads more information on there. I won't waste too much time on that. But what I want to do is just submit that. So again, being DevOps, I need stuff done now. So this is what this application allows me to do, is actually just go on and not have to wait for security or networks to do their thing. Just give me this development environment now. So what I'm going to do really quickly is just double check the ticket is actually going to run before I jump into my slides. So for the eagle eye there, we can see that's been automatically approved. I put some automatic workflow in there because one of the questions I'm constantly asked is, what if your developers could just go gung-ho and request as much as they want? So there's a bit of an approvals process in there, but I've automated that to make this a bit slicker today. So now we can see the tickets updated to workflow building, so something's actually happening in the background. And what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to go over to my code repo. And again, I'll explain this in a bit more detail a bit later on, but I just want to make sure that it's actually running. So I might do that really quickly. Yeah, looks good to me. So let's see if it actually works. Okay. Cool. So just in case anyone remembered this lot, I did prepare one earlier just in case the environment doesn't work because I'm using pretty much open source tools, free accounts for everything, so you get the odd gremlin. So yeah, hopefully my previous one works also. So anyway, to jump into a couple of slides while we're waiting for that to build. So who has breach fatigue? Who's sick of seeing this over and over again? Yeah, thank you. We're seeing this all the time, and we're getting pretty numb to it now. It's not even a news event anymore, unless they're fined like British Airways. And quite often they're traced back to cloud environments. It's traced back to some sort of error that's been made in setup of the cloud platform, which has resulted in data being leaked. Now, I really don't like statistics. I think it just fluffs up the presentation, but I'll make an exception in this case because I think actually this is very prominent, and I completely agree with it. Basically, in the not too distant future, the vast majority of cloud security failures will be the fault of the customer. And this is one of the reasons why. Hopefully everyone in the room knows what this is. I'm not going to explain all this. Essentially, the shared responsibility model of who's responsible for what deployments in the cloud. Essentially, you as the customer are responsible for your data. But I would flip that back on its head and say, well, actually, and question to the audience, so we're thinking of cloud security failures. Can anyone actually think of a cloud security failure that was attributed back to the likes of Amazon or GCP or anything?
The East Coast outage a few years back.
Okay. Did that result in data loss at all, or was it an outage? Actually, okay, cool. So I'm not saying there's not. I had a look earlier today to confirm that. I did find one. But yeah, I think that pretty much backs up that statistic now. We're pretty much there. So why is that? Pretty much, this, I swear this is the last statistics, this slide. is in the vast majority of cases, it just boils down to human error. We're configuring these rich, detailed cloud platforms that expose thousands of configuration points, all with their own idiosyncrasies, own ways of doing things, own sets of best practice. So of course, if you're applying a human to that, there's going to be mistakes. That's just the way it is. And when we go on the buzzword of the moment, multi-cloud, then you have to learn that all over again on a different interface. And of course, being humans, we can't know everything, so there is a lack of full understanding of just what tools are available and the current best practices. So this, in my opinion, is the cause of why we're seeing so many security breaches relating to the cloud. DevOps practices are great. It allows businesses to deploy code and their products at a high rate, respond quickly in an agile way to changes in the market, keep up with their competitors and all that good stuff. But the problem is when everyone's deploying this code at a high velocity, if we don't consider security and bake it in a frictionless manner, then it can be a big problem, essentially burn the house down. And what happens now is DevOps are churning out all this beautiful code and putting it to the public, and we're doing so well, selling loads of products, and it's poor Mr. Security guy that's having to fall back to the tools he has available to clean up the mess. And quite often it is a very, very manual process in order to do that. So obviously I talked about the problem, and I think you fall into one of three categories when sort of adopting cloud and thinking about security, is that you think the tools available from the security provider are enough and just rely on those, and you're in a bit of ignorant bliss, and you're talking about network security at this point. Or you can fall into the category of you realize that this is a problem, but you know there are firewalls or other appliances that you can put into that environment, but you basically don't really know how, or you, from the manual background that you have, and include myself, you'll think, how can I deploy that in an automated manner? And it's just not really possible unless you know what's available. Or indeed you fall into the last one where you've got a security and an automation problem is one of the two. So the answer is automation. If you don't automate security to keep up with DevOps, then you've got a problem, because DevOps will just, they'll see security as a blocker. You're introducing friction and manual processes. So the friction will mean that the developers or anyone working on deploying the code will follow the path of least resistance. They'll try and find a way around you. Security is the bad guy, the blocker. We're not deploying the stuff that we need to make money. They'll try and circumvent us somehow. So one of the problems that I constantly hear from customers is they've found a way around and they're using their own AWS instances, and therefore you have no jurisdiction over that whatsoever. There's going to be no job for me. And that's a problem. I need to maintain my position in the company. But actually, a few years working in operations and just having the workload to deal with, I've realized actually automation is an opportunity here, not only to actually free up our time to do interesting work, the project work that our companies are expecting us to deliver at high quality, but also an opportunity to enhance our careers, because as I've discovered in my journey, you can learn an awful lot of extra skills along the lines of coding and templating and all that, and actually has a lot of connotations. You can use that in your day-to-day job. So I've done a complete 180 on that one, and now embracing automation, because I think we have to as IT professionals now. So thinking about the manual processes, so just going to share a story about my previous company. Just wait a second. So again, I was a bit of a dinosaur back in the day. I worked for a company. I was one of two security ops engineers with the architecture ops. We looked after everything for the whole company. And we had a lot to do. You can imagine we had to work on projects where we had to deal with the day-to-day operations, and that would comprise of all sorts of things, but most notably developer requests to say, we've got a new application, we need some new firewall rules, we need to deploy new servers, all of that. And then we had to go and do that manually. So and that would involve multiple teams as well. So the networking guy would have to do the networking side. I would have to do the firewall rules. There would be the load balancer team, all of that. Meanwhile, Mr. Developer's sitting there, they're twiddling his thumbs. It wasn't good. We didn't have an awful lot of time. And to make things worse, our CTO, he used to come up with some brilliant ideas. And one of his ideas one morning, I woke to an email to say, I'm passing the commandment upon thee, thou shalt be cloud first. So we thought, oh, great. So it was myself as a security ops architect with the networking architect to say, here's an AWS instance, replicate what you have on-prem in the cloud environment and make it work as it would, because all new services are going to the cloud by default. And we foolishly thought, oh, cool, cloud's easy. In fact, it might be the end of our jobs as well, just like automation, because it's going to mean no one needs network engineers or security engineers anymore. Yeah, that was gravely, gravely wrong, because fast forward a few months of heartache, blood, sweat, and tears, we were really struggling. Now, we were building this environment out, and the major stumbling block that we had was we built our sort of standard 3-tier architecture in what we thought was a scalable sort of segmented manner in AWS. When we inserted the firewall into the mix, the same firewall as we were using in our corporate environment, imagine our surprise when the individual subnets were talking to each other directly, defying networking logic. So we're thinking, wait a minute, we've done off Cisco certs and everything, we know how networking works, this isn't right. So you can imagine we're fighting with it over all this period of time. And fast forward again, Google searches and a couple of calls with AWS, find out that AWS networking does not work in that way. So we were in trouble because there was no way for us to steer the traffic and segment out the tiers. So we had to rip it all out, start again, deploy everything in the recommended way to segment all the tiers off. And then we eventually got something that sort of worked. And we were deploying some applications into that. But now there's a problem. We have this state-of-the-art cloud environment. We've got EC2 instances all over the place. Everyone's happy. But then when moves, as, and changes are being proposed, we are still getting the ServiceNow ticket. We're still doing things manually. I'm still logging into firewall GUIs, changing things on the GUI and the interface. It was not scalable. So there was still a manual process applied to this. It was, very, very difficult. And then imagine our surprise when our CTO decides to phone up one day to say, we've received the AWS bill. What are you guys doing? This is a fortune. Why is this the case? And long story short, it's because we deployed lift and shift, like for like, as we had on-prem. We had, I don't know, a dozen or so EC2 instances running 24/7 with no broad knowledge of public cloud. We had no idea what auto-scaling was and how to scale on demand. So rather than having a dozen servers, it should have been about 3 servers, and we should have scaled them up. And then our bill might not have been so high. So that was a big problem as well. And again, going back to that earlier slide, lack of knowledge about what's available to us. And the final one is there was rumours flying around that we were going to be asked to do all this again in either Azure or GCP because our CTO heard the buzzword multi-cloud. So luckily I left by that point. But cool, right, now the nail-biting moment. Has the demo worked? So let's have a look. So we go on here. Yep, that's still running away, but what I'm going to do in the meantime, because I probably have some stuff to talk about while that's deploying, I just want to dig in a little bit more detail about what I'm actually deploying here. So this is the entire workflow. ServiceNow, as we talked about, ServiceNow is a great tool. I don't work for them and I don't have shares in them, but they do give you a free developer instance, so you can do what you want with it, and the only limitation is it goes to sleep after a while. So they're very generous. You can go in and configure what you want on it. So that's collected all our information. But the next challenge is, okay, what do we want to deploy? We want to deploy some sort of template. If we host that code on an internal server or indeed someone's laptop, that's never going to be scalable. That's an issue. So we put it on a code repo, of course. Now we've actually selected GitLab in this instance. Everyone obviously knows GitHub, but GitLab's great because GitLab has a lot of free tooling, CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, meaning that under certain circumstances and conditions, that can actually deploy the code that lives on there, which is great, solves the scalability problem and the redundancy problem. And how that works is that will go off to Docker and it will download a container. So again, the key here is this container is ephemeral. It's just used for the duration of the deploy. So any credentials that it may store in there as environment variables will be destroyed afterwards. So we don't have to hard code any creds into the template itself. And then again, that'll run the code. So the code specifically, what we're actually using is based on Terraform. And again, I personally love Terraform. If anyone doesn't know, basically it allows you to deploy entire environments in public cloud, and other vendors and products can fit into that as long as they have a provider, which is just basically the language transformation. So we've told Terraform we want to build a couple of servers in the GCP in this one, but we want to secure it by default, this whole thing about not introducing friction. So we've introduced a firewall into the mix there as well. And for the purpose of the demo, we've got an intentionally vulnerable server, We've got an attacker, so that's all good. But obviously network security isn't the only thing. So what we've done as well is we've onboarded the Linux server into endpoint protection automatically. So again, another use of automation and APIs. And in addition to that, we've onboarded all the resources into our CMDB, so we can keep track of what's been built and keep tags on actually the configuration as that may be changed later on. And it just allows you to find out what the environment looks like. And indeed, the templates that have been pre-authorized and pre-vetted by security and networks, yeah, everyone's put in a good effort into there to make sure this is secure by default, hence why this is all baked in. But the problem is that might become stale. Obviously, as things change for many different reasons. So having a bit of tracking on there on the inventory can be that prompt to say, actually, this is now out of compliance. It allows you to hook back and complete the loop, go back to your template, make a couple of adjustments, and ergo, it is now deployed. It's all safe again. Cool. So let's check on the demo to see if that's actually completed yet. Cool. So this is the interface for GitLab. As we can see, very verbose. It spits out tons of input, so the geek in you will love this sort of thing. And it outputs information of the deployment that I've just built. So again, just to streamline everything, I've sent myself out an email that gives me links to the stuff that's been deployed. So what I'm going to do first of all is just double check my firewall's up. And hopefully, just to prove that this was on the cuff, tequila. So I've just built that in 10 minutes. Now, taking a step back again, actually, before I go into this in more detail, where's the email for this one? What I can show you is we do have a video kicking around somewhere on here. I know it's hiding here somewhere. That actually shows what happens, how long it takes to configure all this manually. So this is us configuring just the GCP side of things manually using the interface. So this is very much like what myself and my old colleague were doing in AWS, doing all of this, click around in the GUI to configure what's pretty much a basic environment. This was only the GCP side. This doesn't include the firewall and the endpoint protection and all that good stuff. So in total, we estimate at least 3 hours worth of work. So that's a big issue. Yeah, don't know why that's coming up. You guys saw my history there. Cool. Okay, so we've got an environment, so hopefully all the other components are working. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to dive into an attacker server. So this is Mr. Bad Guy. Let's see, yeah. Shaky hands are not letting me do that. Cool. So this is an attacker server. And we've deployed an intentionally vulnerable web server, which is Apache Struts, which, as everyone probably knows, was the Equifax breach. So pretty commodity now. So hopefully we will actually be able to prevent this from happening. But what I'll do afterwards is I'm going to take away the protection, fall back to the cloud native tools, and we'll see if the cloud native tools can catch this now commodity attack. So let's just launch that. And again, the bad guys are all very motivated. They're all automated. They don't have change control. So this is pretty much realistic for what they would do. They would be typing in a bunch of commands manually. Okay, so yeah, hopefully you guys can see that. But it's saying exploit completed, but no session was created. So let's just verify that. No active sessions. The exploit did not work. Okay, and again, just let's in the concept of simplicity, let's just try another couple of commodity attacks. So we've got another couple of things here, a general cross-site scripting attack, directory traversal, all of that good stuff. So we can see that's being blocked. Not sure why that's not loading up yet. I'll try that. Cool. So that's secured by default. So we didn't have to have any manual processes there. This is part of the template. DevOps got what they needed, and it's secure. They've been protected. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to turn the firewall off. And we're going to fall back to cloud native tools. Oops. W off, pardon me here. And what this is, and I didn't speak about this in great detail before, but Ansible is a nice augmenting tool for Terraform, because Terraform does have a couple of oddities in some of the providers that it has. Again, out of the scope of this conversation today, but it it has some sort of limitations. So what we found is we can take the outputs from Terraform and do something with them. And in this instance, we've actually fed that to an Ansible playbook, and that's where the firewall got its initial configuration, i.e. specific to that environment. So it had the firewall rules for the DB server, for the web server, all that good stuff. So again, if you're interested, Ansible is a great tool for more of the moves, adds, and changes aspect. And this is what I'm doing here, is I've actually just launched Ansible here to turn the firewall off. So let's, oh, there we go. So let's try that exploit again, and hopefully my server is actually up. Just while I'm waiting for that. While I'm waiting for that as well, what I'm going to do is just to show some sort of other things you can do with automation. This is obviously an outbound API call that ServiceNow has made to start all of this, but it can also accept API calls as well. So when we got those threats fire off on the firewall, we were able to call ServiceNow and create an incident automatically. And for me, I think that's extremely powerful, because once that's on your ticketing system, and it doesn't have to be ServiceNow, by the way, it could be anything that's API aware, and as is any of the components in here. And we've hooked that back to say, this is fired off. I could do a better job of formatting that, but it's just a demo. But all the information is there, and then we can set up logic in ServiceNow to automatically assign that to your SecOps, and then they're under SLA, so they have to deal with that. They can't just let it lie in a log storage somewhere. So let's check on this as well. So great, it looks like something's happened. So I'm back on my attacker box. Oops, so I know sessions won't work because I'm actually on the box. So if I do, who am I? Tomcat, I'm the web server. And because we are bad guys, we're going to dump the user information from that there itself. So that's cloud native security network tools. They are not addressing the modern security concern there. Okay, and again, what I can do really quickly as well is just try the cross-site scripting attacks as well. Just do a bit of a SQL injection there. Again, this is all basic stuff, and that's getting through the cloud-native tools. And directory traversal here as well. So, yeah, well, that would have worked. We didn't get the point. There was something wrong with the server there. Cool. Okay, so if we go back to this. It's like I said, there's multiple aspects to this, and the key here really is actually you can incorporate and automate any of this as long as it has an API. That's key. If you can do that, they can all talk to each other, because the very nature of APIs is they're open. It just takes a little bit of coding time. And for the record, I've never been a coder, and I've managed to do this along with James. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. Cool. So let's pop back to the slides again. So yeah, I think that's definitely a yes. Didn't need the blue Peter. So yeah, for anyone that was afraid of automation, hopefully I've relayed today that actually automation is your friend. Really embrace it. It can really further your career. I've learned tons of skills from doing this. And actually, be aware of what is available out there. Now that whole deployment, you might not use every single element of that, but it's more of a art of the possible. There's loads of stuff here. Think of how you can incorporate that into your own environments. Think of the templating tools we used, and yeah, just let your imagination run wild. The key as well is, try and identify anything in your day job that might be manual and repeatable. That's a prime candidate for automating it. And if you can automate that, then as we've said before, free up your time, and you can spend more time on the cool project work, which, personally, it gives me more fulfillment. I don't want to be doing firewall rules all day. I don't want to do this. So embrace it. Efficiency is coming. And thank you very much. And if anyone wants to get in touch, please contact James first. He said he wants to hear from everyone tonight because he done most of the work. So feel free to get in touch. And we do have the code available. It's on a private repo right now because we've got to iron out a kink. But happy to share that with you and talk about this as well. And final mention, that was obviously firewall, CMDB, and endpoint protection. This is a living, breathing project. Currently, I'm about 95% of getting visibility for containerized environments on Kubernetes. So getting visibility east-west, and actually getting that fed into ServiceNow. So again, let's keep in touch, and when I get that working, I'd be happy to show you guys. Cool. Thank you.
person not to hack our Wi-Fi, but instead send hacks over our guest Wi-Fi. So thanks for that. I'll look forward to those alerts tomorrow morning. Any questions in the room? You're a very civilised bunch.
Yeah, it's quiet on the slide at the moment. Nobody wants to ask any questions. USB-C. No questions?
I'll run down. Hang on.
Hi, so I'm not an expert on this stuff, but you were using Terraform, which I thought was an AWS product for like infrastructure as code, but with GCP.
Yeah, so Terraform's cloud agnostic.
Oh,
so
really?
This is the great thing about it. And go back to that point about having to learn an interface on a public cloud environment. Terraform takes that away from you because it's the same scripting language that you use over them all. And yeah, just check Terraform providers online. You can have a look at all of them and interact. Has to hook into the firewall, all the cloud providers as well. The only thing that will be different is just the naming convention. So once you learn Terraform, you can apply that to anything.
That's cool. Thanks.
Did you consider or decide not to just do a bash script that did GCP code instance?
Yeah, could have done that. But we wanted to keep some of it manual, so we had a bit more to demo. But yeah, I mean, you can do pretty much anything. So on the Terraform script as well, and what's actually going on in the background, it's not just Terraform and Ansible. There is actually a bunch of bash scripts that run to do things with the servers. So that's where we get the shell in a box, which is why we can get the SSH on the web browser. So loads of that's happening.
How much of the intelligence comes from ServiceNow? If I didn't have ServiceNow, I wanted to build it with experts already.
Yep, so you can launch it. But before, when James and I were working on this, James didn't have access to the ServiceNow piece, and he kept getting annoyed when I had to wake it up. So what you can do is you can just set a bunch of environment variables. Terraform, and this is, again, quite low level. Speak to me about this afterwards, you want more details. But if you Terraform, if it can't find a variable value, it will automatically check the environment variables. So that's how you can get out of coding stuff. So that's where AWS keys come in. So what ServiceNow is actually doing is I've curated the information that GitLab template needs. So if you can replicate that on your own environment, you can absolutely run it. You don't need ServiceNow.
All right,
cool.
Another huge round of applause for Scott, because anybody
Thank you. A couple of these here. There we go.
Awesome, thank you so much. I'm just going to hold this rather than put it on because I'm just closing. So thank you very much to all our awesome speakers, and I echo Gary's comments that live demos are probably one of the most dangerous things you can do in your career, but that went really well, so thank you. Thank you so much to everyone that's helped set up, especially to Gary for organising the room, the pizza, the beer, the refreshments, the bins, etc. Speaking of which, if anyone has any trash, containers, drinks under their seats, if you can just dump it on the table at the back and it will be dealt with, that would be awesome. Skyscanner for hosting, Product Forge for live streaming. This will all be available to rewatch to your heart's content if you want to do so. And obviously to all of you for attending. So a load of people will now be going to Doctors, which is just a pub down the road in that direction. Follow, well, most people, unless they go to a bus stop, then keep walking so it doesn't look too awkward. I think that's everything other than 26th September is going to be our next event at Wood Mackenzie, which is one of the two people that host our large events like this. And we've got the beer farmers. As well as some other stuff going on. Indeed, here comes trouble. So thank you so much for attending. That's us. If anyone's got any feedback, any comments, anything at all, please do come and speak to Stu or I, or indeed any Cyber Scotland Connect moderator or organiser, and we'll do our best to feed that into what we do. We're here specifically for the community. We're here to be directed by and held accountable to. So that's you, and that's anyone on the live stream as well. So please let us know. And then finally, if you're not in our Slack group, join it. If you don't follow us on Twitter, feel free, no pressure, but you have to join Slack. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, guys.